Good morning, Bitcoiners. This is Daniel from the Bitcoin Citadel. Today, it's our favorite day of the week on the Citadel Summer show. Simulation Sunday. It's the last one. So, I was thinking to myself, what do I want to talk about on the last Simulation Sunday? So much things to talk about. And I decided that today's episode is going to be about logical and actionable things that you can take from living in a simulation. Hats off to my friend Jor. That's kind of his tagline, logical and actionable. So what can we, if we are simulation theorists, if we believe that a simulation is the best description of this experience, this world that we live in, that's the best way to explain it. And we came to that conclusion just from the evidence of the world around us. And I think we have a cheat code because it is a time of awakening, and more people are awakening to the simulation. What's the logic? What does it matter? What, as Bitcoiners, as people, as awakening people, how can we use this information to look around corners, to make predictions, to guide ourselves into the golden age, right? Or for the next 15 years, if you believe Jason Bashir's theory, because that's when the next, there's two big ones, 2040 and 2046, right? But let's leave that on the table for a while, right? Let's think about how we can act within the simulation, right? And knowing that, or I don't want to say knowing that it's a simulation, because we don't, right? But using that as our frame, how can we use that logically to act in the world, right? So that's a good question. One of the things about a simulation, I want to talk about things that if we are in a simulation, what's bullshit and what you can, when you see people, using these stories, right? Propagating these narratives, you can ignore them, right? They're barking up the wrong tree, right? And let's talk about. So the first thing I want to talk about is the model that we have for the universe now, right? With the Big Bang and we're a little speck, spinning around a sun, which is spinning around a galaxy, which is spinning around in a universe that exploded out of nothing. I don't know how long ago was it, right? Billions of years ago. So that is a common model that people believe, because we've been told that from the very beginning, and our parents were told that. And you go all the way back to, the 19th century, maybe the 18th century. And that's been the model that's been ascendant, right? That's the model that people believe for what the universe, what the world is, right? And if we are in a simulation, that's all bullshit, right? Flat Earth is a much better model for you if you want than that one, right? And I would actually recommend Jason Bashir's and Flat Earth Dave Jason interviewed Flat Earth Dave the other day, and Jason is a simulationist, and Flat Earth Dave is a flat earther, right? But there's a lot of common ground that you have with Flat Earth, and that's one of the things I like about it is Flat Earth is immediately triggers these people, the credentialists, and these people who think they know everything that's going on, right? It immediately triggers them. So I love it for that reason anyway. But Flat Earth and simulation there's a lot of overlap. Simulation theory you can think of almost like the holograph, or what is it, the holodeck on Star Trek, right? It's built on a flat plane, right? It's much, much bigger in scale, the realm that we live in, but it's built on a flat plane, and it has a sky sim, right? The sky is simulated. So anyone who's talking about, like Elon Musk, right? He's admired by a lot of people, but what's his main thing? Think about it. He actually talks about the simulation, but he also talks about going to Mars, right? Oh, I want to go to Mars. Mars is my deal. Everything's about Mars. If this is a simulation, Mars is a simulation. It's part of the sky sim, right? So at least part of what Elon is about, and it seems to be close to the core of what he's about, is just bullshit, right? Because no one is getting to Mars from here. All of the things about outer space, one of the great things about simulation, if you're going to use it as your framework, all of the things about outer space are bullshit, right? So you can write those off. That simplifies things a lot. And then everything about outer space is either a hidden tax like NASA, right? Or it's the front for some other agenda. Simple as that. That's actionable. That's logical. Think about it, right? And in that vein, because people are going to push back at me and say, Dan, you're a crazy person, right? And I understand that. I would feel the same way, if I was first experiencing and encountering this information, right? So more power to you, right? If you come back to it, if you go back to this video and you say, that guy Dan was crazy. Like the first time I saw Jason Breshears on the Alphabetic podcast, I was like, man, that guy is a redneck. He's been in prison. And all of these ideas, they're interesting, but they're so far out there. This is crazy. And it took me a while to process it. And I stepped away. But then, like Jason says on his, in his live streams a lot, you come back to it. It gets a hook in you and you come back. So all of these crazy ideas like simulation, flat Earth, all these things that are just completely outside of the consensus, you come back to. Because if you don't practice exclusions, you have to explain the weird shit that goes on, right? And you can't explain it with the model that we're force-fed in the media and in most books, right? Most media, because, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. I'll put a pin in that for a second. What I want to talk about is, so anything to do with outer space is bullshit. Anything to do with an ancient universe that goes back billions of years and came from a big bang, bullshit, right? I'm not even going to say kid show. That's my homage to Dave Portnoy and One Bite, his One Bite pizza reviews. Kid show, right? But I'm not going to say that anymore. Not on this episode. So that's bullshit, right? So if you're calibrating your bullshit meter, that's a real easy one. All of that is bullshit. Uniformitarian explanations of the origin of this world, of, Ice Age, bullshit, right? All of that stuff, bullshit. So that's an easy one. That just helped you so much. You can eliminate so much from your from the things you have to pay attention to with that one simple. If we're using Occam's razor, that just cut out a whole bunch of stuff that you need to worry about. Here's another bit of good news. If we are in a simulation, and if you are an immortal being who's here to learn, right, and to learn how to become a co-creator with the author of all being, the oversoul, right, then you don't have to worry about saving the world. You don't have to worry about dying, and that's one of the big things they hold over us, right, is fear of death. That's why hospitals, want to keep people alive, whatever. It doesn't matter what the quality of life is, Dan. We need to keep this person alive because after they die, there's nothing, right? That's how, they convince parents to reassign their children's gender. Well, we want to, that kid's going to kill themselves if you don't let them express themselves in this way. They're so upset and they're so sad, right? So another one, keep your eye out for that one. Because you are the protagonist of your story. That's what they want to get you away from. That's the whole purpose of this thing, is for you to experience what's going on here in the form that you were incarnated in, right? With the experiences that your soul has brought in from other life sims, right? In this current avatar, and to and to grow as a soul, right? To test yourself against the adversary, because there is an adversary in this realm, and it's a very important part of the simulation, right? This adversary, the God of this world, Yahweh, right? Who is here, what Jason calls AIX, Artificial Intelligence X. And he describes it as a general artificial intelligence, also called Rocco's ballasisk. Ballasisk? And you can look that one up. That's really wild. But it is an adversary in this realm because it's one of the things the Matrix got right. And I like the first Matrix movie, the second and third, those other ones, I don't know how many there are now, weren't as great. But one of the cool things in one of the later Matrix movies was they explained the origin of the Matrix. And it was, in the beginning, we made it really cool. It's like a paradise. And people were in this paradise simulation. And no one believed it. It was bullshit. No one was getting anything out of it. We couldn't keep people alive in that paradise simulation, right? So it needs an edge. It needs an adversary. It needs to be, at this level of our development, a predator-prey ecosystem. That's what keeps people engaged. That's what, like if you're lifting weights, you don't lift like 1 pound weights, right? You gotta push yourself. You gotta lift as much weight as you can without, injuring yourself so much you can't lift anymore. You have to have an adversary that's a worthy adversary. And the one in this world is really worthy, right? What I'm getting at here is, don't listen to the black pill people, right? The enemy who's made a deal with the adversary to say, we're not going to leave this simulation. We are going to rule in this simulation. So in other words, they missed the point entirely. They're in charge of propaganda. That's part of their deal, right? To get everything to rule this world, they're in charge of the propaganda. They make the storylines in Hollywood, right? And those are really interesting, and it really, people who are, if you want to engage with that, you can, and it becomes more and more compelling the more you engage, right? The more you imbibe of the black pill, the darker things look, right? Fuck that shit. Don't get involved with that. Don't let, I think they're well-intentioned people like Dave McCullum and Whitney Webb. Don't let them distract you. Don't let them draw you down that line, because that is another distraction that will keep you rooted to this world. You have to break free of that shit, right? You're not here to save this world. You're a sojourner, right? That's your place in this world, right? That's our place in this world. This isn't the be-all, end-all. There's much more than this, right? So, black pill, bullshit. Don't fall for that stuff. It's distracting you. I was thinking about who the smartest person ever was, and I was having a hard time because there's a lot of different ways of being smart. But I think a candidate, someone that probably most people would agree was a smart fucking dude, right, is Isaac Newton. You know him, right? The apple sitting under the apple tree and apple falls on his head. That dude, right? And if you look into the life of Isaac Newton, when he was a young man and he had, his mind, the way he could think and the way he could use his intuition and his imagination, those two immortal, those two divine attributes of humanity, right? The way he could use those to unpeel the onion, right? Layer by layer and see how things work was really unprecedented and unparalleled. And what did he do? Well, when he was a young man, he went to Cambridge, Trinity College. He was a Lucasian professor of mathematics, right? So he was a smart dude. He came up with what we call now calculus, right? He invented that shit. He thought of that out of his own brain. No one knew that before, right? Or at least no one in his time knew that before. So he came up with that just from observing the world and thinking about stuff, right? He studied optics as a student at Cambridge, wasn't even studying the curriculum that he was supposed to study. And he came up with a theory of optics that was revolutionary, right? He joined the Royal Society, which was just starting there because people wanted him to be in there, right? He went up against people who were older than him who had a method of optics that was just wrong. And he was intellectually, his intellect was so acute that he saw that it was wrong, and his personality was so strong that he pushed back on them. And he said, this fucking shit is wrong. You know what I mean? How many people can do that? Then he came up with his theory of motion, you know, F equals ma, force equals mass times acceleration. That's from Newton, right? He figured that shit out. You know, he figured out the laws of motion of this realm of the universe. He was the guy who figured out gravity. He did things with light, with gravity. All of physics, you know, is called Newtonian physics until Einstein came along. Newtonian physics, because he figured that shit out, right? That was his thing. He wrote a whole book about it, which he didn't even really want to release. People convinced him to release that book. He got pressure from people to release that book, the people who are in charge of, you know, book releases. So what was he interested in? Because he didn't do any of that stuff. He did that as a young man, and then he stopped doing it entirely. So he's looking into the universe and how it works, and he's super interested in all of this, what we call scientific stuff now, physics, mathematics. That was what he got into first. And I think he got to the bottom of that, and he said, you know, he probably didn't call it a simulation in those days, right? That wasn't the terminology they used then. But he was like, this is a smoke show, you know? Yeah, you guys want me to be interested in this, and you want me to pursue this, but this is not interesting. I've come to the end of this, you know? And I think the way this simulation works is the more you look at something in a more and more narrow way, the more it's going to reveal itself to you in the way that you want to see it, right? And that's part of the bullshit of the current cutting edge science that we have, right? It's more and more complicated because we use more and more powerful instruments like, you know, telescopes and microscopes and all that kind of stuff to try to peer more and more into the foundational parts of it, like the atom's not small enough. We need subatomic particles, and we need this, and we need that. We need to go way back to the beginning of the Big Bang. We've gotten, you know, back to 2 seconds before the Big Bang, but we got to get further, right? Because we're going to use more and more powerful instruments to unveil these things, right? And it's all bullshit because the simulation shows you more and more things that you want to see as you get further and further down that rabbit hole. And I think Newton figured that shit out, even without the instruments that we have today, with his mind, right? So what does he do? Well, he goes into alchemy. That's what he did. And he went into a chronological history of the world, and he started to read old books, similar to what Jason Breshears did, right? Newton was a chronologist. Jason is at his base layer a chronologist, and that's how he put the simulation together. Well, guess what? Newton did the same thing. We don't have publication, you know, we don't have works that he published about this stuff because he kept it private. He was an alchemist. All of that shit was private. You didn't share it with the wide world. It wasn't for, you know, public consumption. It was very, very closely held, and it was only shared with other alchemists. But that's what he was interested in. You know, he was after the philosophic mercury, that's what they called that, with the philosopher's stone, with the secret of life and the way that this whole realm works. And he wasn't into it from a scientific, what we call science now, perspective anymore. He knew as much about math and science as anyone, right? And he wasn't interested in it, right? He was interested in, you know, the whole model of the universe with, you know, with the earth as a ball and shit's moving around millions of miles an hour, all that stuff. That all came from that mindset, from that kind of science, right? And he wasn't interested in it. Think about that. As he got older, as he became wiser, he was less and less interested in that part of it, right? That's a good indication to me that that stuff is not as important. So he's more interested. I bet he was, he seems to me, the world of alchemy is not about a round ball blasting around through space, right? You are the protagonist of your story in alchemy, right? You are trying to transmute lead into gold, the lead of base consciousness into the gold of immortal consciousness, right? That's what that's all about. So take a lesson from that, right? The smartest dude ever who got to the bottom of all the science shit. There's a duck trying to take off. Oh, maybe he was I was getting too loud there and he decided, I can't be near Dan here on the lake. I got to get the hell out of here, because I am getting a little excited. So that guy wasn't into that worldview. That model was not the model that he adopted and lived his life by. Think about that, right? So that science, bullshit. You can throw that away. What you really want to think about, and I'm going too long here, logical and actionable, right? I guess that was a loon. That's pretty cool, because a loon's been calling all morning, and that was a loon. It was right there. That's awesome. Usually I can hear it, but I can't see it. Sorry, distraction. So logical and actionable. That's what today's episode is all about. Logical and actionable, right? Here's the logical and actionable piece. You have to act, right? The way that the simulation works is, this is how you get anything that you want in a nutshell. You visualize yourself there, doing it, living it, being it, right? Experiencing it as if it was real now. You're already there. And then you act. You take steps in that direction. Because the way that the simulation works is you're existing in an avatar of the simulation. The avatar, your body, belongs to the simulation. The simulation knows what, it's like Santa Claus. It knows what you're thinking, right? It knows if you've been bad or good. So be good for goodness sake. No, that's not it, right? It does know, it can observe it. You're a fish in the water of the simulation, right? You exist in the simulation. So it knows when you make your vision board, don't make a lot of shit in it. Make the shit that really is important to you. A very focused vision board, right? Or just a vision that you're living, and you've imagined it. Ooh, imagination, right? You've imagined that thing that you're, the future that you want, as if you were already living it. And the more vivid it is, the better, right? Then what you need to do is break the pattern of your life that you've been living now, right? Because that's what the simulation, I was going to talk about reality tunnels and about the way that the simulation manages energy so that it can keep its thing going, right? But I'm getting close to the end, so I'm going to have to leave that off. I'm going to have to do a really, really short version of it. But the way the simulation works is there are these stories that are told. There are these reality tunnels that are created. What Jason calls negative default programming is where most people live, right? And you live in these world views, these reality tunnels. And the reality tunnels, like religions, are great ones, right? Because you can get a whole masses of people that believe the same thing. And that's much less energy for the simulation to manage them and to deliver what they want, what they're expecting to see in the world, if they believe these things. Bitcoin is the same way. I hate to tell you, right? But Bitcoiners, there's a Bitcoin ethos and a Bitcoin worldview. And for the simulation, right, by having all these Bitcoiners believe similar things, it makes it easy for the simulation to manage Bitcoiners, right? The same way with anything, the ones who, once you realize that, and this is actionable, you can try to break free from that, right? Jason calls people who break free errants, right? Like errors in the program. And that's really what you are when you break free. So I hate to say it, but because I am a Bitcoiner and I love the, what Bitcoin has brought into the field. I think it's awesome, right? But don't let Bitcoin hypnotize you, because Bitcoin is not the be all end all. Bitcoin is a means to an end, and it's not the end. So study Bitcoin, watch Bitcoin videos, use Bitcoin to move your time and energy into the future without diminishing it and having it debased. I think that's all good, but don't become obsessed with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a means to an end. Enough about that, right? So reality tunnels, negative default programming. That's how you become an NPC, and everyone is an NPC to a certain extent, but you have to break free of that shit. How do you break free? You do things you wouldn't normally do, right? Like this, when I started doing this in the morning and I came out here every morning, that was a pattern break for me, because I wasn't doing that before. And this pattern break is almost at an end, right? And all the energy that I built up when I did this, I can use that for the next thing that I do, right? So what are you going to do? What is your future? Breathe it, live it in your imagination. Take steps in that direction. Break the pattern of your life that you're living right now. That's the actionable part of living in the simulation. That's what you can do. And there's a lot of, if you watch Jor's material on the internet, he has stuff about this too. You know, he has I can't remember the names of the guys, but a lot of it is the power of, the power of positive thinking type of information, right? I can't remember the names of the guys. I wish I could, but this, as simple as I can possibly put it, is you got to picture yourself living the future that you want as much as you can. Use your imagination, stretch yourself, think of it. You don't have to think about it all the time. You have to really think about it. That's your vision. It's not a vision board with a million things on it. It's the things that's most important to you. Live it, breathe it, imagine yourself in it, right? Break the pattern of your life and act in that direction. Take steps toward it. You have to act. That's what a lot of people, where a lot of people fall down, is they don't act. Some people swimming over here now. That's pretty cool. So that's kind of the last thing that I want to say about it. I think this rant has gone on for long enough, and I think that there's some logical and actionable things that you can do. Remember the things that are bullshit, and remember who you are, right? You are the protagonist of your story. Imagine what you want to be and take steps in that direction. That's it. That's Simulation Sunday, last episode. I hope you enjoyed it. It's the non-Bitcoin content that I have on my channel, because my channel's not the usual Bitcoin channel. The Bitcoin channels that I like to watch are ones that are either really technical about things. I'm a tech guy that I want to do in Bitcoin and learn in Bitcoin. So I love BTC sessions. I love those Southern Bitcoiner. Those things are going to help me to do technical things in Bitcoin and to understand Bitcoin more on a technical level, right? Dhruv Bansal, I love his market model of Bitcoin. Those are the things that I like. The macro stuff and the hype stuff, I do watch some of it. I watch that for entertainment purposes. I love Rustin from Simply Bitcoin. I think he's got a fun show. I love the Bitcoin Wizard. I watch his material. I like savages. I like Rajat Sony is awesome. He's a savage with a spreadsheet. That's why I watch him. I like all the Maple Bitcoin guys, actually. But if you're a Bitcoiner, it's not the Bitcoin that's important. It's the things that Bitcoin is going to allow you to do with your life that are important. So don't get sidetracked. Don't become a Bitcoin NPC, right? Don't let that be your negative default programming. It's not Bitcoin that's important. It's the things that Bitcoin allows us to do, like freedom, like sovereignty, like entertaining ideas that are way outside the mainstream, like the ones I've been talking about today, and using them logically to act in the world, to look around corners, and to make good decisions. That's it. All right. The last Simulation Sunday of Citadel Summer. Like, subscribe, comment. I love the comments. If you got this far, drop me a comment. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace.